Would you like to level up quicker but also safer in WoW Classic Hardcore? Well, then this video is definitely the one for you. And even though you're an experienced player or you know a lot about the class that you're going to play in Hardcore, then I might still be able to give you some new information that will also improve your leveling. The first class I will cover in this guide is going to be the Hunter. When you start this class, it's gonna be important that you always use your ranged abilities and ranged attacks. These will deal way more damage compared to being in melee range. Therefore, I usually just use my auto shot, get a bit of distance, and wait for another auto shot to be ready. But all of this will change when you reach level 10 and you complete your Hunter chain quest. Because the moment you get a pet, well, then this will also be your tank. It will be taunting the enemies, and you can just stand still and do your auto shots and different abilities. So what is the best pet to choose as a Hunter? Well, in my opinion, or well, my preference is just to use a boar. Why I like this is because this pet will eat pretty much everything you find. So when you loot a new type of food, well, then you can just feed it to your pet. This is extremely useful and also time saving, as you don't have to go to a new vendor all the time to purchase new food. Another big reason for why I choose a boar is because they have a charge. When they charge, they stun the enemy, but they also do a high amount of damage and therefore also a high amount of threat. This allows me to start attacking right away without getting aggro. So you might have encountered this before. You need to kill one specific enemy, but there's also a lot of other nearby enemies. You try to pull this and run away, but for some reason all of these are also linked together. This is because you did a big mistake. You used a single target ability. Now all of them are linked together and they will evade at the same time. What you should have done instead was to use an AoE range ability, for example your volley. When you pull more than one enemy at the same time, either with a ranged ability or spell, well, then these will no longer be linked together. Yeah, you will pull them at the same time, but because you did this, then they haven't been chain pulled. Instead, they were pulled at the same time and no longer being linked together. So you can just shoot at the target you need to kill, and all of a sudden the other enemies will also start to evade. Super useful if you just need to kill one specific enemy and you don't want to deal with the rest of them. One spell that is quite underrated is Disengage. So if you accidentally pull aggro, and your pet's taunt ability is on cooldown, and the enemy also resists your feign death, well, then you can just spam your Disengage to reduce your threat. In most cases, this will work after 1 to 2 attempts. When you level up your Hunter, it's also important that you have a decent ranged weapon. But in the open world, there's many different vendors where you can either purchase a white or a green weapon. In the description, I've added a link to one of my hardcore guides where I talk about all the open world vendors where you can purchase a new amazing weapon. So make sure to check this out in case you would like to level up your Hunter even more efficiently. Another thing that will also be important to upgrade is either your Armor Punch or Quiver. As an alliance, you can do the Night Watch. This is a quest in Duskwood, and it will reward you with a decent Armor Punch or Quiver. Wing Clip is an amazing ability that allows you to slow the target. There's no cooldown, and why this is important is because whenever you get a new weapon, and if you need to increase your weapon skills fast, then you just spam your Wing Clip. This way, you can level up your weapon skills in next to no time. One thing that will also make you able to save some time so you don't have to kill all the nearby enemies is Eyes of the Beast. It allows you just to run into the specific enemy you need to pull, but instead of you running in and risking your life, then you do this with your pet. So as long as you continue to attack the enemy, then it will also continue to follow you. This procedure you will repeat until the enemy is back to your position. And now you can just easily kill it without having to deal with all the other nearby enemies. As a Hunter, you have many different aspects. And let's say there's for example 2 you prefer to use when you level, then you can just make a macro and put in the name of these 2. So now when you drag this macro to your action bar, you just use one button to swap in between the aspects you prefer to use. Talking about macros, then I also find it useful to have a pet attack macro together with some of my main abilities, so I never forget to send in my pet. What you just need to do is to type /pet attack, and in the next line you add in the ability you would like to use. Besides having pet attack macros, then I would also highly recommend you to keybind your pet passive ability. So if there's a nearby patrol getting close to your pet, then you can put this on passive and move it back to your position. One last macro I would like to highlight is /cast eagle eye. Making a macro like this will allow you to spam your eagle eye. So this will also allow you to travel around and scout for different things. For example, a specific enemy, a herb, or a vein. The rogue has so many different ways to either stop an enemy or to get away without dying. At level 8, you can train evasion. This will increase your dodge chance by 50% for 15 seconds. An important thing to remember is that you can never dodge any attacks if your back is turned against the target. So even if you use evasion, make sure always to face the target, also when you try to run away. Another important ability as a rogue is gouge. This is an easy way to stop the target for a few seconds, for example if you need to either first aid or stop a cast. Gouge has a short cooldown, so it's also an amazing way to take down targets, for example to gouge, get some distance, and use a ranged weapon or throw. And every time you use this ability, you also gain 1 combo point. So eventually you will be able to have 5 combo points, and then you can use a kidney shot. Kidney shot is a stun you can use in combat. And the more combo points, the longer the stun duration is also going to be. Another ability that makes the rogue so insane is blind. This will cause the target to be disorientated for 10 seconds. One thing I like to combine together with blind is first aid. So while the target is disorientated, then I will also be able to heal myself for quite a bit. But in case this is still not enough, and I end up making some mistakes and I need to get away, then I can always just use the sprint to increase my movement speed. And like it wasn't enough, if I then accidentally pull even more enemies as I run away, then I can always just use a vanish. This will allow me to turn into stealth in combat, so I'll completely get out of combat and be able to survive. As a rogue, it's so important that you always track these cooldowns, but also the duration of your CCs. Therefore, I like to combine 2 different add-ons, Omni CC and Big Debuff. So now at the target portrait, but also at the nameplates, you will be able to see the CC and the duration. And at your action bar, there will now be numbers. These numbers indicate the remaining cooldown in seconds. So as a good rogue, you can easily control the fight even when you're fighting more than one target at the same time. Macros will definitely make this a lot easier, and therefore I will also share the ones that I use later in the video. So here's a quick trick you can do with your distract ability. If you're fighting a target and a patrol is about to get close to you, then you can always use your distract in combat. This will prevent the monsters from moving for quite a few seconds. In most cases, this should also give you enough time to finish off the targets and get back into stealth, so you avoid using your vanish. One thing I would also highly recommend you to do when you level up your rogue is to make sure you focus on getting some good weapons. For example, at level 10, you can go to many different vendors where you can purchase a wide sword. Auction House will of course also be available on official Classic Hardcore, so maybe you might be able to pick up a weapon from there. Else, there's many different open world vendors where you can purchase green weapons. And in the description, I've added a link to a video with all the vendors that I use when I play hardcore. Remember also to level up lockpicking so you can open up different chests, but also doors and gates that is preventing you from entering a certain dungeon. Next up is the different macros that I like to use as a rogue. And in case there's a macro that you prefer to use as a rogue, then make sure to share this in a comment below the video. So what I like to do is to use different kind of mouse over macros. For example, for my gouge, blind, or kick. This allows me to not swap target, but easily CC another target at the same time. So all you need to do is just to mouse over a target and then use the macro. You might have tried this before. You either spam your stealth ability to get into stealth and then you accidentally break it, or while you're in stealth you accidentally hit the keybind and now you break your stealth. Don't worry, we can easily fix this. Just make a macro that will look like this and drag it to your action bar. Now you can spam this macro and you will always turn invisible, but you will not accidentally break your stealth effect. And what's even more amazing is that you can also add a new line with, for example, zap or cheap shot. So now you spam this and you instantly turn invisible and you use either zap or cheap shot. What's also good about this is that then you will never forget to turn stealth when you need to use zap or cheap shot. Leveling a mage is super chill, at least if you don't AoE farm. But getting a wand early on is also super important. You can either craft this as an enchanter, purchase it on the auction house, do a quest, or even purchase one at a vendor. You can find one of these wand vendors either in Stormwind City, Ironforge, Undercity, or Orgrimmar, and I've made a complete wand guide for low-level characters, and you can find this in the description. In some cases, it can be difficult to kill one specific target if there's a lot of other nearby creatures, but there's an easy way to fix this. If you start with an AoE ability, then these creatures will not be linked together. This allows you to cast a Fire Blast and kite away, and at some point all the other enemies will start to evade. This trick can be so useful when you need to kill one specific enemy, but remember, it only works when you do an AoE ability. But look what happens if I use a single target ability. Now all of these are also linked together, so I'm not able to do the same trick any longer. Instead, they will try to chase me down, and every time I apply a Fire Blast to one of these, then the evade time will also reset for all of them. So what you're forced to do is to run away and reset the fight completely, else you'll most likely end up dying. Alright, so as a mage you can create different portals, and these you can use together with your party members. So why portals are so important in hardcore is because you can use these in combat. So let's say you have to attempt a difficult boss either in a dungeon or a raid, or if you have to do a difficult quest where you need to loot an object but you would like to get away fast, then you can take advantage of these portals. So if your tank dies, or if it's going to be a difficult situation and you would like to make an emergency exit, then you can run to the portal and get to the main city without dying. So here's a trick you can start using at low level. I usually pull with Fireball and then a Frostbolt. This will allow me to pull the target, and right as it starts moving to me, it will also be slowed. This will allow me to cast 1 to 2 additional spells before the enemy gets to me. This will prevent some damage, but also allow me to cast without getting interrupted. As a mage, you can create your own water, but when you reach level 5, 15, 25 and so on, then you will not be able to create this new water. Therefore, I usually purchase it at the vendor for a couple of levels before I can go to the trainer and learn this. This is because the water that I can conjure is only going to be level 5, so it's going to be a lot worse compared to the vendor water. So I usually do this for a couple of levels before I can go to the trainer and learn the new rank of Conjure Water. As you level up, you will slowly unlock new ranks of the same spells, for example Cone of Cold and Frost Nova. But why it's going to be important not always to use the highest ranks is because these also cost a lot more mana. So whenever I would like to keep a slow effect on these targets, or maybe stack them together with Frost Nova, then I simply just use rank 1. Because the CC duration and slow effect and duration is the exact same no matter what rank you use. You just end up having a lot more mana because you used a low rank. In case you plan to level up as an AoE mage, then I would highly recommend you to get items with a lot of stamina and intellect. These two stats will help you a lot as an AoE mage, as you get a higher health and mana pool in case you make a mistake. Another thing I would highly recommend you to get is First Aid, and this is no matter how you plan to level up a mage, because bandages can be used in combat to heal. So for example, right after you frost over targets, or maybe sheep a target, then you can heal yourself and get back into the fight. Here's a quick tip with Blizzard. So when you place the first Blizzard, you could always press the key binding and not move your mouse. That way you'll be able to see the green circle, and this will indicate where your Blizzard are hitting. So this is an easy way to track if all the enemies are still inside the Blizzard. And whenever the enemies get close to you, you either move to the left or to the right. Now the enemies will be stacked way better, and next you will need to do a new Frost Nova followed by a Blizzard. I have a complete Mage AoE leveling guide from level 1 to 60, and you can find this in the description below this video. As a mage, I feel like it's so important to use macros but also add-ons, especially mouse over macros. This allows you not to swap target, but instead you drag over your mouse to the target you would like to attack. For example, either sheep, counterspell, or something else. And if you wish to make it even easier, then you can also install 2 different add-ons, Omni CC and Big Debuff. What they do is that they allow you to track your CCs a lot easier, either over the nameplate or for example the target portrait. And you can also see the cooldowns of your spells at your action bar. these will be displayed with different numbers. This is such a huge game changer, and especially useful whenever I do a dungeon, so I never miss a CC and I always keep track of my polymorph. In a moment I will cover the Paladin, but before I do this, then I would also like to highlight that in the description you can find links to all my class guides, where I talk about the different talents I like to choose, professions and other things. The Paladin is a good choice for those of you that would like to level a beginner-friendly class, because this class has many spells that allow them to get away even when they make a big mistake. Most people prefer to level up as a Retribution Paladin, so where you use a two-hand weapon. But if you get to low health and you need to run away, then I would highly recommend you to also have a one-hand weapon and a shield. When you equip a shield, you also increase your chance of surviving as you get more armor and also now a chance to block attacks. So make sure to equip a one-hand weapon and a shield as fast as possible when you need to make an emergency exit. One way to do this quickly is just to make a macro where you in the first line type /equip and then the name of your weapon, and in the second line /equip and the name of your shield. Then you drag this macro down to your action bar, and now you can easily swap between your two-hand weapon and a one-hand and a shield. Your Holy Light and Flash of Light is amazing for healing yourself, especially if you're just fighting one target. But when you're fighting too many enemies at the same time, then this cast will also be knocked back and it will take you so many seconds to cast it. In most cases, you will end up taking more damage compared to the healing you do. Therefore, it's usually also way better just to use a shield and then a heal. For example, your Divine Protection that you unlock at level 6. When you're shielded, you're not going to take any damage, and you're not going to get interrupted or anything as you're casting your heal. But the whole reason why I show you this clip is mainly because of First Aid. When you level up First Aid, you can craft bandages to heal yourself. And this is so useful when you shield yourself, especially if you're low on mana and you can't really afford to cast a Holy Light or a Flash of Light. So leveling up First Aid should definitely be mandatory. Your bubbles are also going to save your life many different times. But remember, in hardcore, you will not be able to use a bubble followed by your Hearthstone. So it's going to be way better just to run away with your bubble and try to get out of combat. So as you're running away, make sure not to do any attacks, else you will just extend the time before the enemies will also start to evade. So what do I do next? Because my bubble is just about to expire and I'm still low on health. Well, now would probably be a good time to either do a quick heal, use a potion, or just use your Lay on Hands. Because in Classic, you can use a bubble followed by Lay on Hands. And this is mainly why the Paladin is such a beginner-friendly class, because you can make mistakes and you can easily get out of them without dying. One thing that can be quite annoying is that when you're about to use a seal, well, then you also need to use your judgment before you'll start your auto attack, or you need to right click on the target, or maybe even use your auto attack ability. What you should do instead is to make a macro with the spell you would like to use, and in the second line /start attack. Now you can spam this macro without cancelling your auto attack. And as you spam this, then the spell will also be casted when there's no longer a cooldown. At level 20, you can pick up your class-specific quest. This will take you on a long journey, and you will probably not be able to complete it until you're level 24. But it will be important to do this quest line, as you will also be rewarded with an amazing weapon. Another amazing thing as a Paladin is that you don't have to spend 90 or 100 gold getting your mount at level 40, because this will be free. Many classes might not even be able to purchase their mount when they reach level 40, so this will give the Paladin a big benefit, as you can now also increase your traveling speed. But also because all the gold that you just saved, you could for example spend into different items that will increase your leveling speed, or maybe even into different investments that will make you a lot of gold in return. All the things that I plan to invest into, but also things I plan to do as I level up my character to make a lot of gold, I've covered in my hardcore gold making guide. You can find a link to this guide in the description below the video. The Paladin also has a unique opportunity to, for example, level engineering and alchemy at the same time, or maybe even engineering and blacksmithing. Because when you save gold for your first mount, then you could also spend this into materials on the auction house and level up professions, so you don't have to do your own gathering. But if you don't plan to use the auction house, then there's a few options. it is to either pick up mining and engineering, so you can make different goggles, grenades, and also the target dummy. Another good option would be to level up herbalism and alchemy, so you can make different elixirs and potions that will benefit you in fight. For example, healing potions. What I would definitely choose would be mining and engineering. So mainly because of the target dummies you can spawn. When you spawn them, they will also try to taunt all nearby enemies. So if you accidentally make a big mistake, well, then you can also spawn these and run away. And because the auction house is available, well, then I can now also purchase potions, have my target dummies, and even a gather profession, mining. So with the Paladin being covered, I'll now also move on to the Druid. One thing that still kills many Druids in hardcore is that they're getting slowed or rooted or even dazed. But did you know you can remove root and slow effects simply just by reapplying a new form? I know this footage is from PvP, but it's the exact same as if you were fighting an NPC that, for example, cast a net at you or use a frostbolt to slow you. Whenever I get to low health, and if my mana is also low, then what I usually do is just to root the enemy. And then I use a bandage to heal myself. Because yeah, even though you have healing spells, then first aid is still amazing. And when you use first aid, you also regen mana at the same time. So after finishing your bandage, you might also have enough mana to cast a new root. Then you can just repeat this until you get enough mana to go back into cat form. Talking about low mana, as a feral druid, or well any druid, it's always amazing to have an item with a lot of spirit. So when you get to low mana, you equip this item, and on top of this, you can also benefit a lot if you do this combination together with Innovate. The next trick is for those of you that will be playing a Night Elf. If you're going to heal in a dungeon, or if you're going to level with another person, then you can heal this target, drink, and then use your Shadow Melt. This is of course before any of you go into combat. This way the target can now start tanking, and you will be healing it without doing any threat. Super useful, especially in dungeons and raids. One spell that is quite underrated as a druid is Soothe Animal. This spell allows you to increase the pull range by 10 yards. Super useful if you need to go into a certain location and pick up a quest item, or for example an herb. This way there's a way higher chance that you won't pull the nearby enemy. I also find this extremely useful when there's a nearby patrol in a dungeon, or for example an enemy that we wouldn't like to pull. As a druid, it's amazing when you unlock your cat form, and especially also your prowl and also your pouch. But this combination will require you many different keybinds or well key presses. But what if I told you there's a macro you can set up? This will allow you to instantly turn into cat form and also use your prowl. And if you continue to spam it, it will also use your pounce. So this is how the macro looks like. If you just wish to go into cat form and use your prowl, then you just need the two first lines. And yes, you will be able to spam this macro even when you're in stealth or in cat form. It will not cast a new form, and it will not break your stealth effect, or well, your prowl. Another macro I find mandatory to use as a feral druid is a macro that instantly turns you into bear form and also use your feral charge. So amazing when you're at low health, and if you would like to get away, then you just charge another nearby target and you start running away in your cat form or travel form. But yeah, this will require you to play as a feral druid, else you won't have feral charge. So this is how the macro looks like. And for those of you without dire bear form, well, then you can just replace this with your normal bear form. When you're a low level druid, you will not instantly restore rage to use your feral charge. But then you could always just use your enrage ability to get a bit of rage, so you can use a feral charge. Another useful option is to spend 5 points into this talent in the Resto tree. This allows you to instantly restore rage when you go into bear form. But I also have a trick for you when you're going into cat form. In the feral tree, you can spend 2 points into feline swiftness. This will increase your outdoor movement speed. And at level 20, but also 21 when you can spend points into this, it will be a huge benefit, so you can travel around in the world even faster and therefore also level up even faster. Another class we need to cover is the priest. Leveling a priest will take a lot of time, but it's also a safe way to level up a character. The reason for this is because of Power Word Shield. This allows me to absorb a lot of damage during the fight, And what I usually do is to cast a new shield before I go into combat. That way, during the fight, the debuff might also run out, and then I can apply a new shield to stay at max health. But if you're going to level a priest, then I would highly recommend you to also get an early starter wand. What you can either do is to craft the lesser magic wand as an enchanter, purchase a white wand at a vendor, or even one on the auction house, if you're going to use the auction house on the official classic hardcore servers. There's honestly so many different ways to get an early starter wand. If you are interested in this, then I would highly recommend you to check out my hardcore wand guide. You can find this in the description below this video. Whenever there's 2 targets, and one of these might be difficult to kill, then what I like to do is to apply a Shadow Word Pain to the target, followed by Mind Control. This allows my Shadow Word Pain to continue doing damage to the target I've Mind Controlled. That way I can kill it even faster. And whenever the Mind Control is about to expire, then I can just fear the targets and apply a new dot and a new Mind Control. And please remember, if you need to heal yourself and there's any nearby melee enemies, then it's important that you don't start healing right away, else you might get knocked back or interrupted. So it's gonna be better to apply a shield and then heal yourself, because when your shield is active, you will also not be knocked back. And remember, you can also use your fear, or well, your psychic scream, to fear nearby enemies. These enemies will then start running away, and when this happens, then they might also chain pull even more enemies. Therefore, it's also gonna be important that you plan your route. What I mean is that when the target is feared, then it's gonna be important you don't run in between a camp, because the target that you feared will now run into the camp and pull all nearby enemies. This can be so deadly and probably also cause you to end up dying. Therefore, make sure to plan your escape route. As a priest, you have Mind Soothe. This you can cast on a nearby enemy and increase the range before they will start attacking you. This can be seen right here, where the one to the left is the one with Mind Soothe. This spell is so important to use in dungeons, but also if you need to gather a certain material from the ground. What's quite fun here is that I'm almost next to the enemy with Mind Soothe, but for some reason it's the other one that is getting pulled. This also shows how amazing this spell is, and something that should not be underrated when you level a priest. Whenever you get a new wand, then it might also be tempting to either disenchant or sell the old one. But I would highly recommend you not to do this. Some type of enemies will also be immune to some type of spells. For example, a wand can have fire damage, so if the target is immune to fire spells, then you will also do no damage. Therefore, it will be useful to be able to swap to an old wand with, for example, frost damage. But why is it so important to get an early starter wand? Well, it will save you a lot of mana. So after 5 seconds of no casting, you will be able to restore mana. And using a wand will not count as casting. So what I usually do is to start with either a smite or a mind blast, then I apply a Shadow Word Pain, followed by my wand. And this rotation allows you to always have a lot of mana, so you never have to spend any time drinking. Also super useful in case something happens and you need to have enough mana to escape and heal yourself. There's one last trick I would like to share before I talk about the next class. So you might have tried this before. You spam your shoot ability, or well, your wand, because you would like to kill the target fast. But what you will also notice is that it will be next to impossible to start shooting. This we can easily fix with a macro. So what you will need to do is just to type /cast !shoot. This allows you to spam this macro. Of course you need to drag it down to your action bar, but what will also happen now is that you can spam this ability without interrupting or stopping the wand. The warrior is one of the more difficult classes to level in hardcore, but I will share some different tips and tricks that will make it a lot easier for you to also level and survive all the way up to 60. So the best advice I can give you is not to rush. What I mean is that whenever it's a possibility that I can go to the next zone at that level range, then I usually don't do this. For example, as a warrior at around level 10 when I finish the first starting zone, then I like to go to another starting zone. This allows me to do green quest, but also slaying creatures that is below my level. I'm not saying you should go back to the starting area, just go back to the starting zone where you can pick up quest that starts at around level 6 or 7. This allows you to finish that zone and get to probably 12 or 13. So now you can move to the next zone and be way higher level compared to what is recommended. This allows you to level up your warrior a lot more chill and also increase the chance that you will make it to 60. Having a good weapon will also have a huge impact as a warrior, so either purchase one at a vendor or on the auction house. As a low level warrior, you can also avoid a lot of damage by hamstring kiting. So you run in, you do your auto swing, apply hamstring, run out, and now whenever your next auto swing is ready, you move back in. This will prevent you from taking so much damage. So instead of standing still and getting attacked as you wait for your next auto attack, then you will move away and go back into the fight whenever you are ready to do damage. As a warrior, you can also use your blood rage to stay in combat. So after a fight has ended, then I usually use this and a first aid. This makes me able to maintain my rage and heal at the same time. So make sure to do this trick if you wish to level up even faster. In case you pull too many enemies, then you can also use your hamstring to get away. I usually just apply hamstring to all the nearby enemies and then I start running away. And remember, you can also use your intercept to intercept a nearby target to get even more distance. One thing that kills many warriors is the possibility to use your charge. When there's more than one nearby target, then I would recommend you to just range pull, for example with a gun. This class also benefits a lot from spirit. I know this stat might seem pointless, but it's honestly so good. When you're out of combat, you will regen a lot of health if you have a lot of spirit. So what I tend to do is to keep some spirit items and equip these whenever I'm out of combat. Just to give you a quick example, here's a character with no spirit items, and look what happens the moment I swap to items with spirit. The health regen is so much faster. Being able to quickly swap to a one-hand weapon and a shield is so important as a warrior. I do this with a macro, where the first line will be /equip, the name of the one-hand weapon, and the second line /equip and the name of the shield. Now I can just press this macro to quickly equip a shield and a one-hand weapon, so I can for example go into defensive stance, use my shield block or shield wall. The Searing Totem is one of your most dangerous abilities as a shaman, because this might accidentally pull another nearby enemy or maybe even a patrol. When it's about to shoot, or even if it gets to shoot at the target, then I would highly recommend you to immediately also spawn a new Searing Totem. By doing something like this, you will also prevent the target from being pulled and maybe also prevent a death. Because you unlock your Searing Totem at low level, then there's one more tip I would highly recommend you to do. As long as you or someone else has more threat than the totem, then it will also not be destroyed. And this will be important as your Searing Totem only has 5 health. Therefore, I also like to protect it with, for example, a Stoneclaw Totem. This will try to taunt all nearby enemies. What we also gotta remember is that you have different kind of spell ranks. So let's say you're for example low on mana and you need to kite away, well then you can always just use a rank 1 Frost Shock. The reason why we will be able to kite for a long time is because of the slow effect, not the damage. So there's no reason to use the highest rank, as this will also require you to spend a lot more mana. This will also give you more time to wait for an important cooldown, maybe even a potion. One thing you can also combine together with this kiting is an Earthbind Totem and a Searing. So if your Frost Shock is resisted, well then your Earthbind will apply a slow. So just make sure to kite around these 2 totems. One thing that kills many shamans is that they forget that every single spell also requires mana. So they might spend a lot of mana using different things that will not really benefit their escape plan. Instead, what you should do will simply just be to spend your mana casting a Earthbind Totem, maybe a Shock, and your Ghost Wolf. So as you can see in this clip, Earthbind applies a slow to all the targets. This allows me to get some distance, so I can cast my Ghost Wolf without getting interrupted or silenced. Another thing that was also quite useful here was my Stoneclaw Totem, but this only worked because the totem was also able to taunt the enemies. If I had higher threat, then this wouldn't really be a possibility. One spell that is quite underrated as a shaman is Farsight. This is so useful when you either need to level up your character or look for a herb or a vein. So when you use it once, you just click where you would like to see, and now you can press the spell once again to travel even further, allowing you to quickly scout the whole zone. Super time saving, as you don't have to travel around on your mount, or for example in Ghost Wolf, to find a specific enemy. The last class in this guide is the Warlock, and the Warlock is an amazing solo leveler. You can easily go around and kill more than one target at the same time, and even solo different elite targets. But because the Warlock is an amazing solo leveler, and they can do many different things other classes really can't, then this is also what kills them before they manage to get to 60, because they try to do something that is also going to be impossible. You might have tried this before. You need to kill one specific enemy, but it's also stacked together with many others. If you pull this specific enemy with a single target spell, then these will also be linked together. So now you will no longer just be able to kite away and kill that specific enemy, because every time you attack it, it will also reset the evade time for the other enemies. But don't worry, there's an easy way to fix this. The moment you unlock an AoE ability, then you can channel this and hit all the enemies at the same time. When you do this, then they're no longer linked together, so you can kite away, apply some dots to the target you need to kill, and after 10 to 15 seconds, the other enemies will now start to evade, allowing you to kill the target that you're supposed to kill and complete your quest. And another thing you can do with your Rain of Fire is to scout for any invisible monsters, so you don't run into these and accidentally pull too many. Another thing I've also seen that causes many Warlocks to die is because they fear a target and then this target run into more enemies and pull these. This can easily be fixed with different curses. If you apply Curse of Recklessness, then the target will still have the fear effect, but it will no longer be fleeing. In fact, it will start running towards you and even be able to attack you with its melee abilities. But look what happens the moment I swap to another curse. Now the target will instantly be feared, because the fear effect is still on the target. So this way you can easily control the feared target as a Warlock. You just swap between Curse of Recklessness and another curse. As a Warlock, you have many different abilities, for example damage over time effects. But instead of having every single of these at your action bar, then you can just make one macro and press one click to apply all the dots. So how this works is that you make a new macro with /cast sequence. Next up, you add in the spells that you would like to cast. For example, all the different damage over time effects. What I would also highly recommend you to do is to remove the spell rank. This way, whenever you get a new rank, the macro will continue to work. So pay attention to my action bar. There's only going to be one spell right now, but the moment I cast this, it will also swap to the next spell that I add into the macro. This allows me to dot up a target just by pressing one keybind. I would still recommend you to have all the abilities on your action bar, but when you just need to speed level or add dots to many targets, then having a macro like this is super useful. Talking about macros, then having a mouse over macro is also amazing, for example for fearing targets. So I can have a main target and now I just mouse over another target and then I spam the keybind. This allows me to fear another target even without swapping, so I can continue to DPS my main target. This can be seen right here, where my main target is the axe thrower, but I mouse over the mystic and I can fear this even without swapping target. As a Warlock, it's also so important that you know how to control your pet. This can easily be done with macros as well. What you need to type in is /pet attack, and in the next line you add in the ability you would like to use, for example your own spell, Shadow Bolt. So when I use this macro, I'll start to cast my Shadow Bolt, and the pet will also attack the same enemy. This is for sure a useful thing to do, but one thing I believe is even better is to make sure you also keybind your pet passive ability. So if your pet is attacking a nearby enemy and some other creatures is about to get close to your pet, well then you can always send your pet back to your position, allowing you not to pull these enemies and probably also survive. I find it so useful to level up first aid. This allows you to, for example, have aggro with your pet and heal yourself, or fear a target and use your first aid to heal yourself at the same time. Then you can use your life tab to convert the health into mana and kill the target. One way to make sure more people reaches level 60 in hardcore is by liking this video, so it also gets recommended to even more out there. One way you could also help me is by sharing this video with your friends. If you would like to see more classic hardcore guides, for example leveling, tips and tricks, or gold making, then make sure to also subscribe so you get notified the next time I post a video. But yeah, best of luck with your hardcore journey, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and have an amazing day. Peace!